Well, good evening, Facebook Live. Welcome back to our nightly series, Conversations with Coach. And I'm your host, Mike Smith, Executive Director of Scouting with National Scouting Report. I'm excited about tonight and another all-star team we have for you. Tonight, we're talking softball one more time. We'll discuss some of the most up-to-date topics in the game. You'll get some great facts from these individuals, some thoughts and opinions about what's going on in the softball world and its current landscape. And of course, we're going to discuss scouting and recruiting and what's important now more than ever. Tonight, we're joined by my co-host and one of our scouts, Robby Wilson from Lone Oak, Arkansas. Robby's been with NSR for about 7 years. And if there's anybody that's in the know in college sports, high school sports, this is Robby. He's been in college coaching football and baseball. He has a BS in exercise physiology. Also has been a strength coach and has coached some travel ball. Robby, thanks for being on again with us tonight. Appreciate it.
Thanks for having me.
Another one of our scouts from Florida is Nikki Bowey. She's originally from Colorado, but of course resides down in Largo, Florida. She was a 4-year starter at Mercer, coached high school in Virginia Beach, Virginia, has an MBA. That's right, folks, an MBA in sports business management from Central Florida. This is a smart cookie here on with us tonight. Spent some time with 2 NFL teams, the Tampa Bay Bucks and the Jacksonville Jaguars. Nick, thanks again for joining us with us.
Thank you for having me.
Awesome. And then our last, our newest member of the NSR scouting staff is Dave Humphreys from Corona, California. We're excited about Dave being part of us. Dave and I actually go way back a little bit. Dave and I were dorm mates in college at the Masters College in Valencia, California, an NAI school out there. Dave actually played some basketball. Dave had a mean 3-point shot and could post up with any of them. He coached high school and college basketball, as well as been involved with travel ball with his wife, Krista, who played at University of Arizona. Of course, she won 3 World Series down there with them. Like I said, Dave's been in the travel ball world for a number of years, and his connection to California travel ball is pretty extensive. Dave has 3 daughters, so that's right, 3 daughters, including his wife. Dave is the only male. His oldest, Caitlin, is signed with Cal State Fullerton, will be a freshman this fall. Sierra, who plays in the Corona Angels organization, his youngest, Alexis, pretty much plays everything. Is that right, Dave? Is that where we're at?
Thank God she does. I appreciate that.
Well, welcome everybody to Facebook Live tonight. We're looking forward to another great evening and some crazy, crazy hot topics right now.
Yeah, to say the least.
So those of you that are on Facebook Live, feel free to ask this group any questions as we move along tonight. Really looking forward to getting those questions and trying to answer them. But you know what? Let's lead off with Robby in the batter's box tonight as we go into Conversations with Coach. So Robby, we're coming right to you, buddy. This has been a hot topic as of yesterday. And this review, the review that the NCAA is going to have come May 13th with the temporary recruiting dead period. So I want to start off by reading what was just announced last night. And this is: the coordination of the committee received the status of the current temporary recruiting dead period and received a report from the NCAA chief medical officer. So based on this information received, and the coordination committee agreed to review the status of the dead period again during the May 13th meeting. The coordination committee indicated that it is likely, quote unquote, it is likely to extend the temporary recruiting dead period through June 30th. That's right, folks. From May 31st to June 30th, that is 1 more month, and will consider additional medical information and feedback from sport oversight committees and other constituencies on May 13th. So we're going to get right into this. What is your guys' take on this temporary recruiting dead period that can be extended? So Robby, lead us off, baby.
Oh gosh, we could have the entire call over this alone. As you know, because we've been on together ever since this was released yesterday, between the phone calls with the college coaches and the Zooms with some of the who's who across the college softball recruiting world, you know, what we have basically figured out is you can even track back to our first conversations with coach that we did with softball. when me and you both predicted this. Both said there's no way with everything else that they're talking about, and especially once they came out with pointing out the financial losses that happen with football and everything else. They can give you another reason. It's this reason, it's that reason. But it pretty much, like I said about a week ago, whenever the SEC came out and said, hey, SEC schools can't have camps on their campus this summer. And everybody was saying, well, that means they're going to be out more recruiting. And my answer was, hey, this is just going to be my opinion right now until something transpires. But I guarantee you that here in just a little bit, they end up extending it at least just a little bit. And it's like, not saying any names, but like that college coach told us earlier, the fact of the matter is the way that the NCAA typically does things is when they know that they have to give the public some really hardcore news that is going to send everybody in an uproar. They're not going to just all of a sudden, hey, by the way, boom, slap in your face. They're going to, hey, we're considering this and talking about it, but we're going to vote on it in a week. So go ahead and be mad for the next 7 days so that you're done being mad. That way it's not a big surprise. So basically on May 13th is when they're having their meeting, right? And they're going to announce right after that whether or not, because right now it's supposed to end May 31st, but they're considering extending it a full 4 weeks until June 30th. Kind of like the college coach told us yesterday, they do that, it's already a done deal. If I was making a prediction, now, don't base your summer or anything around it, but it's like we talked about before, hope for the best, plan for the worst. You have to have a plan across the board. So, there was a lot of moving elements to their statement that it also pointed to something else that we haven't even really had that many people talk about, which we can talk about later, but it points towards virtual, AKA video, being a dominating factor for the months to come, as if we haven't been saying it when we say video, video, video. And, and we can, dab on that later, not dab, tap on that later. I'm not going to dab or anything, but, but yeah, in a long story short, if I was making a prediction, it's going to happen. And here's what's going to happen. You're going to have showcases that all of a sudden have to make a decision, because we all know, from your time coaching in college, the NAI and JUCO, NJCA are not going to necessarily follow with the NCAA. They're going to come up with their own stuff and tell their people their own stuff. So now each one of the showcases that are going to be going on are going to have to make decisions, because some teams are going to make the humongous mistake and pull out. And let me be the first to say, if this does transpire and the college coaches all of a sudden say, hey, where are the D1, the NCAA says, hey, our college coaches that are in the NCAA are on a dead period until June 30th. The coaches are still going to recruit. They are still going to watch. They may not be in person, but they're going to be watching somebody via stream. And it can either be you or it can be the other kid trying to vie for your spot. So, but the other piece of that is the showcase directors are going to have to make the decision, because they're going to have NAI and JUCO coaches coming, but at the same time, the parents and the other ones are, well, there's not as many coaches and there's not as much this and there's not as much that. And, they're in a tough spot. Like I forgot Nikki was talking about earlier, and she can elaborate on that later, but one of the tournament directors told her, she's basically closing up 8 or 10 of her tournaments or whatever because of it.
13 events. So let's throw this back over to you, Nick. Now you're out on the West Coast, down Southwest.
West coast of Florida.
Yeah, West Coast of Florida. Sorry.
Let's be clear.
Florida coast. But what are you hearing now that this came about yesterday? And Robby just alluded to some of that. And we don't want to scare people out there, but when they quote unquote likely, I think that's the soft blow to what's going to happen to prepare people. And so what are you hearing?
Honestly, I haven't heard as much as you guys have heard, because people are trying to I feel like down here, people are laying low a little bit and just waiting to see what happens instead of
because they're enjoying their time on the beach while everybody's at home.
They open the beaches down here, so that's awesome. But I think that people are just trying to figure it all out. And I did get a lot of, texts and phone calls from a lot of my travel ball coaches, and just saying, I heard this. And I'm like, let's just wait. This is, let's just wait till we have more information. Tournament directors. I mean, I got two emails from a showcase director today that still has her showcase going on. Okay. And so it's like, these things are not all being canceled. They may be pushed out, but like practices are starting here. Teams are starting to get together. Schedules are still being finalized. And I think it's just kind of a waiting game. But for us down here, it's kind of like business as usual. Like we're doing stuff like right now.
You have to do that until you get the definite stuff. I think
Right.
people though have to have a plan. And realistically, you're talking about from May 13th to the 31st,
Yes.
you're talking 2 weeks. 2 weeks sometimes is not enough time to make new plans. So that's kind of the direction that they're trying to go right now. So Dave, I'm going to come out to the new rookie out in California. What's some of your thoughts?
Well, it all depends on Governor Newsom, of course, and the decisions that he makes as far as opening things up. But right now, every college coach that I've talked to, everything is shut down, and tournaments are not canceling, but they're not giving a lot of information as far as what they're going to do, whether they postpone it to a later date. But at the same time, it's tough because the parents as well as the athletes don't know what to do. So from our standpoint, the education that we give our athletes in reference to what they should be doing at this time is a major key to them staying on the college coaches' radar. But when it's all said and done, PGF, which is of course the national championship, they're not saying a lot right now. They're just keeping quiet in reference to see what happens with our governor as far as opening things up. Our mayor of LA, he's not opening things up. I mean, small things. Salons are not going to be open up for those women, but at the same time is the bars, the restaurants, they're not opening up in reference to people sitting down and eating. So it's going to be a lot of things that are going to be on hold right now in reference to what's going to take place within the next 3 or 4 weeks.
And again, viewers, we don't want to scare you, but we just want to give some reality out there that it's out there. The vote is a week away. And so we have to prepare. And we've already been in talks with travel ball coaches. They're starting to prepare. Our team's going to cancel. Because a lot of them have camps, college camps before their showcases that college coaches come down. Well, now if those coaches can't be out, do they cancel those? And then will teams drop out? So there's a lot of things going on. So I want to let you all out in Facebook land to know that we are going to stay on this as much as we can. And if we get any breaking news, we're actually talking about next Thursday, having another softball live. So stay tuned next week, the day after this thing comes out, and hopefully we'll have some more news for you then. But I thank you for at least helping us with that updated news. We do have a question from one of our viewers. And so Dave, I'm going to throw this to you first. And this is from Laney Ledbetter. Will the coaches be able to travel to local tournaments? What's your thoughts on that?
College coaches that I have talked to on the West Coast in California basically said they have been shut down as far as going to anywhere off the campus until the end of this month. So what's going to happen when the May 13th with the NCAA, things could change, of course, but for right now, all the coaches are staying home and not doing a lot, just taking care of their family and watching a lot of video, just like Robby said.
And that's all they can do. Anybody else have anything with that? I mean, I think that's a nice, easy.
I think the statement that the NCAA came out with yesterday, not just where they're talking about extending the dead period, but where they are very specifically talking about, they mentioned the word virtual numerous times. There's a reason, tournaments like, and those of y'all that are running tournaments that aren't doing it, nothing against them. Just in this present time, like Falali, for example, with the Tulsa Invite, even if, it's normally flooded with coaches, but now all of a sudden there's not, because the NCAA does strike down the dead period and extend it to June 30th. Well, he has full softball coming to stream the thing, so now inevitably those coaches are still going to need to watch kids. They're not going to sit at home without softball and without advancing their program somehow during that 30 days. They're going to watch someone. So those showcases like that, and even, like we'll talk about in a little bit with, TFL and how they're going to be, streaming things with stats and all that other stuff. The ones that have the streaming down pat and getting the streaming to the coaches down pat. And I'm not talking about mom and dad plugging up a GoPro on the back of the fence and then all of a sudden freezing while she's mid swing going. I'm not talking about that. I'm talking about the good Flow Softball, one of the other companies that are doing the live streaming. Those companies, if I could give one caution to the wind, it is if the dead period does get announced that it's extended until June 30th, travel coaches, or better yet, parents, please do not push your travel coach to pull your team out of the tournament. Because number one, your kids still need to play. They've already taken off more time than anybody has ever taken off before, just about. And they need to get out and sharpen their tools and compete.
Well, and here's what I want to, and I don't mean to cut you, Rob, but here, and I think you brought up a good point. Parents, you have to understand that you are going to be able to get out right away, and you're going to try to knock off the rust, and college coaches are potentially going to be out there. Now you have an opportunity to almost prepare yourself for an entire month to get out in front of college coaches. Am I right, guys? I mean, and ladies, sorry.
Yeah, I feel like sometimes high school season, because, you know, the majority of the states have high school season during the spring. Since that didn't happen, that was kind of like the spring training for your summer ball, knocking the rust off. But now this is going to be their opportunity the first month.
So it could be a blessing in disguise for some of these kids to be evaluated by coaches. I mean, let's think about that, really.
Well, and the actual, I guess, icing on the cake of that whole thing is, don't think of it. Don't think that if they do extend the dead period, don't think, okay, that means I have 45 days, 2 weeks in May, and then I have 30 days in June where I don't have to worry about my recruiting and I can just worry about sharpening my edge. They're still going to be doing what they've been doing, and they're still going to be building their list and working their list. And Nikki and they both can tell you, day to day, we're having more and more kids get offers that the coaches never met face to face, but they had everything that they like. Today, 9 in one day alone that it's happened to. But it's, you know, long story short to that is, don't all of a sudden think that you don't need to be trying to still get recruited, whether they're in person or they're watching you externally. If they're watching you externally and they're having to watch it through a stream, fishing in the right ponds becomes even more crucial, because you're going to have to send that stream to your right coaches.
Yeah, most definitely. And again, those that are watching out there and listening, just know that just because the coaches aren't there doesn't mean that you guys aren't going to get out and play. You are going to play softball. There's going to be tournaments that are going to be open. There's just not going to be coaches. And so, like Robby said earlier, I still think you need to get out. We need to knock off that rust. You need to get at bats. Pitchers need to throw to batters. We need to run the bases. We need to just get outside and participate and compete a little bit, maybe before. So I know some things have been scrolling through some of these questions, but does it? What a couple of them are? Is it affecting all divisions? Well, the rule that they're talking about will affect all NCAA. Now, that doesn't mean that NAI and JUCOs will follow that, but it could. What's been happening is if the NCAA has done something, the NAI and JUCOs have followed. Doesn't mean that's going to happen, but it could happen. So I want people to understand that. So let's try to kind of swing to some, maybe a little bit more positive side of things. But we're seeing now a lot more regional tournaments and showcases that are being thrown around now. There's a lot of teams in different states that are saying, hey, I'm staying in the state. Texas teams, I'm staying in the state of Texas. California teams, I'm pretty much staying in California. That's what they're trying to do, and trying to have these tournaments. Some may move in a little bit just with drive distances versus flying. It sounds logical enough, right? But what does that do for some of these kids that need to be seen, that are coming from a different state in some of these travel ball programs? Because I know there's teams in Texas that have kids that are from different states, Virginia, Florida, and California kids that are coming from Colorado. What are they doing? Are they hopping on a plane and flying? Are they just going to pick up with a local team so they don't have to travel? Dave, I'm going to kind of throw that to you. What do you think what are some of those things that are coming about, and how do these girls, what do they do? Do they play in their states only? Do they get in travel and try to play with their teams? Like, what's their plan?
Well, the nice thing about it is my daughter plays on 18s. So there's a girl that lives in Colorado that flies out to California every weekend to hit and go through whatever tournament we can be in. bottom line is the parents don't want to do that anymore. So from our standpoint, where our travel organization is, they're opening up to basically whoever wants to play can play. If you parents don't want to play or don't want to travel, then guess what? Just stay at home. But bottom line is, just like you said a minute ago, Mike, college coaches want to see athletes playing. They want them on the field. They want to see live games. They want to see them in pressure situations. But if they're not going to be in those pressure situations, how are they going to get recruited? But just like Robby said a few minutes ago, the college coaches are not going to be changing what they've been doing for the last 4 weeks. They're going to continue to do the videoing. They're going to continue to do the calling, the texting, all of that kind of stuff. But at the same time there are a lot of question marks from a safety standpoint. Are you going to allow your child to get on a plane? Or you allow your child to be in a dugout with other girls where you don't know necessarily who they've been around? So there's a lot of question marks, especially when parents make these final decisions and reference the best for their kids.
And I think David, you brought up the best point. It's up to the families. Parents, it's your decision. I wouldn't want a travel ball organization to force you into doing anything you don't want to do from the safety of your daughter and your family. So you really need to make that best decision for her. If you feel like that decision is to send her to California to go play because there's going to be XYZ coaches, then that's what you need to do. But I just think now with all these regional showcases, which is going to be the best. So Nick, do you have anything to add to that?
The only thing that I've been thinking about with these regional kind of showcases and, Texas having their own thing and California having their own thing, obviously the South is kind of a hotbed of softball too. But like, what about
Always.
what about the smaller states
Yeah.
or the less populated states, or maybe the ones that don't have as much, economic growth at this point than other states? Like, are those kids just going to be left behind because they can't play in a regional thing and all the coaches want to watch where, the Texas and the California, and, I'm from Colorado, so I know that Colorado kind of gets hopped over. You get Texas and then you go Arizona, California. But like that might happen even more now if they're staying in those states. The coaches might say, hey, I'm just going to go to this state. But what about everybody else? So it's like,
and I think what you're going to see is, I think you're going to see those states like you're talking about that maybe don't have the tournaments in them or a little bit smaller, is they're going to try to find the regional area to go. If Mississippi doesn't host a lot of tournaments, they may go into Alabama and maybe try to get into Texas.
Yeah.
Or they may try to go into a tournament in Florida now instead of hopping on a plane and flying out to California or Arizona. So I think you're going to see more of the, can I drive there versus can I fly there? I think
absolutely. And with coaches too, like once they're able to get out, it's like they're going to be doing regional stuff and not having to go somewhere. Like they might not go to PGF because maybe their recruiting budgets are cut and they can only get regional kids for maybe the next 2 years, 21s and 22s. You never know. But like, I think we'll see that a lot where they aren't making those flights because of budgets.
Sure. Robby, you have anything else you want to add to that?
Yeah, I mean, so there's two parts to it. The first piece being, and of course we can't reveal some of our sources about certain things, right? But like one of the answer, and people that think that, like Nikki was talking about, that some of the smaller states, that this won't grow and blossom and have longevity with the regional stuff because of some of the smaller states. And we've heard it about Arkansas, and we've heard it about the South Dakota, and some of your but as from what we were from a conversation we had earlier today with certain people, there is a conversation of still doing the same thing there, but doing it with these two states or these three states as a in synchrony, so that they can still accomplish the same thing. But what in every problem lies an opportunity, but in every opportunity lies complications.
Sure.
So here's the circumstances given right now has all of a sudden blossomed this thing that's Scott and Shelton and them have came up with, which is beautiful with the regional stuff. And now there's other states and other even smaller states talking about linking together and doing that kind of stuff. Here's the other thing. Let's imagine imagine a smaller state, and let's say that the two small states that connect to it band together, and then they do something like that, and then they do something like that, and they do something like that. Now, Mike, you're back coaching in college, and there's equal studs here, at this one and equal studs here at this one. And now with it during the week plus doing the stuff on the weekend, now your recruiting budget, which by the way just got slashed by 40 or 50%, and you know, in addition, so coaches knowing who they are going to recruit before they plan their scouting schedule and their travel schedule and everything, they are going to have to plan their budgets like their career depends on it. And they're going to have everything. They're going to have to be sold on a kid before they make the trip to go do something, you know, to go to this regional showcase now, because there's going to be so many of them. And truthfully, when you ban these 3 states and these 3 states and these 3 states, and then California has one and Florida has one that also brought Georgia in, and now you have Texas making that decision as a college. I mean, when you were at Ole Miss, what would you have done?
Well, you have to pick and choose what you're going to do. So, Robby, I'm so glad that you went to this point, because it is going to lead me and lead us right into the 4 stages of recruiting, because you've mentioned a couple of different pieces about how are kids going to be fishing in the right pond? Like, how are they going to get seen? How is all this stuff going to happen? So let's just jump into it. Let's talk about the 4 stages of recruiting that we're talking about. Robby, why don't you lead us off and talk about the identification and recognition phase? What is that to the recruiting process with a lot of these prospects and these families on with us tonight?
The identification and recognition, you know, it's kind of like we talked about a couple of weeks ago with the 4 phases of recruiting. It's the same in every sport, but the amount of time it takes is different for every sport. So there's still, you know, the first piece being identification and recognition. Bottom line is the coach is going to find out about the person that he needs that year, that position. He's going to find out about it from people that he trusts. He is not cruising YouTube. There, you know, the kids that, oh, well, we've got videos on YouTube and we send emails and this and this. And it's like, you're convinced that the coaches are looking at, but you didn't go to YouTube and realize that you have 3 views in a year on that video, you know, and 2 of them were your grandmother. So the identification recognition phase, the coach has a need. He's going to find out about the kids that match that need, that graduation year, that position, that size, speed, academics, everything from the people that they trust. And the bigger the school, the smaller their inner circle. You know that as well as I do. The bigger the school, the smaller their inner circle. So it kind of leads us into step 2.
Yeah. So step 2, David, I'm going to throw this to you. What stage 2 is our evaluation stage. So kind of explain what that means.
Well, basically what they do after they do that identification, as far as finding out about their specific athletes that they're going to recruit, basically they look in reference to evaluate them, right? And what do I mean by that is basically they want to evaluate them through playing, of course, videotaping, right? They want to see specific things that separates them from other athletes. And the more they can separate themselves from other athletes, guess what? That puts them into another stage. The bottom line is you have certain athletes out there right now that continue to do the same things over and over, and they wonder why they're not getting recruited. And that's exactly what NSR does. And it just helps them understand the whole recruiting process. Because again, I'm a dad. I have a senior. She's going to Cal State Fullerton next year. I'm going to tell you this right now. Until I got into this company, slapped me across the face because I didn't know anything about recruiting as far as what the college coaches are looking for. The bottom line is you need to get your daughter evaluated. And if you're still going to the same camp or you're still going to the same regional tournaments and there's nothing happening, guess what? Mom, dad, you better start thinking other ways.
And Dave, to your point, because we're both parents, you're a parent of a daughter that was recruited. I was a parent. I am a parent of a son who we ended up signing with NSR because I thought as a college coach, coaching 21 years, that I could do it myself. I mean, my contacts with baseball, played professional baseball for 12 years, 21 years of college coaching. At the time my son was being recruited, it was 19, 20 years. I thought I could do it all. I thought I had the contacts, and I realized, yeah, I can't. And my first phone call was to Robby and saying, Robby, buddy, I know you're a softball guy. I know you've got a lot of contacts in all these sports. We need some help. And Robby stepped in and said, hey, let me see what we can do for you. And we started that process. So I'm a believer in what's going on with this process. And parents need to understand that they can't do it themselves. If me as a coach of 21 years and professional baseball for 12, have all these contacts all over the country, and I can't do it myself, good luck. It's not going to happen. You need to have somebody that is doing this full time, which takes me into the comparison phase. And so, Nick, why don't you throw that comparison phase of the stages of recruiting?
So once the coach has actually evaluated your skills and said, yes, this kid fits in the box that I'm looking for this class. Usually coaches are only going to bring in 4 or 5 kids in each recruiting class, some bigger, some smaller, depending on the school, depending on what they're looking for. But, in general, we'll say 4 or 5 kids. So this is the point when they've narrowed down their list of like 200 kids that they initially found out about to about 30 kids. Okay. So just because you are being invited to camps personally, all this kind of stuff that, we're interested in you, we could see you as a, we'll say Ram because I'm from Fort Collins, Colorado. But I should have said Bears because, anyway. So all these kids are in the same phase. And so it's like, if you have 10, 20, 21 pitchers, and you guys are all at camp together, you're being compared to each other. Okay. There's always going to be somebody better than you on the field. There's always going to be somebody smarter than you in the classroom. If you know how to communicate with that coach, you're going to stand out. Grades always win. If you have the exact same thing as somebody else, grades are always going to win. And especially now, grades are going to be even more impactful now. So once they have narrowed it down, they're going to compare you, and then they're going to move into the final phase, which you can't get to unless you go through the process. Get to the final phase, which Mike.
Yeah, and I will. But one thing I want to add to what you just said in that comparison phase is, listeners, right now, see this thing right here. This is called a cell phone, and social media. They're going to compare you with what your social media is doing, yes, and how good or how bad it is, and that may be the difference between you taking that next step where you're being compared. And that next step would be the aha moment, the offer. Oprah Winfrey isn't here saying, you get the offer, you get the offer, you get the offer, you get the offer. That coach is giving the offer to their number one person within that comparison phase that Nikki just talked about. And so if the number one person's on there doesn't get that or doesn't accept that offer, it's going to go to number 2 and number 3 and so on and so forth. And if that offer is taken, that player that is underneath them no longer has that on that job. Now that person has to go to a different board, and hopefully there's another offer from somebody else.
Don't put all your eggs in one basket.
Exactly. There needs to be a number. We can't say, hey, I've got a top 10, I've got a top 15 school. We got to broaden our horizons. So our first stage is recruiting, again, identification, recognition, our evaluation stage, comparison, and then of course the aha moment, the offer. So
Mike, think about this.
Yeah.
When I was going through the training that I was going through, to find out less than 5% go play college sports.
Correct.
So as a dad, as a parent, when I started looking into all of the sports that are out there, all of the universities that's out there, only 5% get to go play at the next level. 1%, I believe, is that Division I?
Mm-hmm.
So
5.5 Power 5.
Yes, exactly. So the biggest thing for me as a dad, it was like a shock in the aspect of, I just think my daughters are going to go play college sports. That was me. But when push comes to shove, I didn't know anything about the recruiting process until I started to be a part of NSR, which I'm glad I am.
So Dave, I'm going to throw this to you as a parent. So you've already had a daughter that's been through the recruiting process. You have another one that is pretty close to beginning to start talking to coaches. So as a parent, what would you do, or what would you say to parents for advice on when they should start their recruiting process with their daughters?
It's never too early. The bottom line is college coaches, especially in this time, what are they doing? They're going to 21s, 22s, 23s, 24s. And to be honest with you, I've even seen 25s in reference to recruiting them. Of course, they can't officially recruit them, but at the same time is they're looking at video. Okay. From my standpoint is I wish I would have done that earlier with my oldest one. Now that I've gone through it, I've started it earlier for my middle daughter. My 9-year-old, bottom line is she's going to be set in reference to understand the whole recruiting process. But from my standpoint, it's never too early. Because again, if you don't start it early enough, guess what? Somebody else will, and somebody else will take that spot for you.
Anybody else? I know you guys aren't parents of daughters, but you guys, well, I guess.
Hey, I
forgot.
Robbie is, but
Robbie,
I have a lot of
forgot.
kids. I might
What's that?
not have biological children, but I have a lot of kids. Okay.
Okay, you
They're
do.
my
You do.
children. They're
So
my
what advice, what would you say? What would you guys say?
I think
I can tell you from a parent standpoint, I treat it the same way that I do when I'm choosing a prospect. It is never too early if the prospect
Is ready.
has her head on straight, understands time management,
Yep.
has thick skin, and the parents aren't cuckoo for freaking Cocoa Puffs. If all of that can line up, I mean, I can go across the board with kids before the D1 rules change, obviously, but I can go across the board with kids that I started with in 7th grade, and by the end of 7th grade year, they would have offers. Now, right now, I will not start with a 7th grader. I refuse. We have scouts that have, and we have a scout, scout that is working with one. Yeah, that the kid treats her. She acts like an 11th grader. I think it may have been Nikki that was talking about it. Like the kid handles her business. And it's impressive. I have not, because I have the golden rule of until the first college coach asks me about a graduation year, I'm not going to move forward. But at the same time, if there's one thing they can take away from the it's never too early thing, it is if the kid does not already handle her own business, and not just that, it's not just all on the kid. Mom and dad, hear this. If you are not ready to get out of the way and sit in the back seat, still be along for the ride, but let Sally drive the car. Still involved in every single step, every single breath, but let Sally drive the car. If you're not prepared for that, then it may not be time for Sally to get rolling. But, if my daughter has to have surgery on her torn ACL, I'm not going to second guess what the doctor's talking about the right procedure is and turn around and say, I got a skill saw back here. I'm not going to turn around and do that. I'm going to get out of the way and let the professional do what they do. And that's what you should do after you go to nsrdishinc.com/softball.
Nick?
a little plug there, huh?
Nick, you got anything to add?
I think the guys pretty much said it, but I mean, I am the one who started working with a prospect. It was actually the summer of her 6th grade year.
Wow.
She's the youngest I started working with for a reason.
But she was mature enough to start the process.
Man, I mean, her athleticism. And when I sat down and talked with her and her family, I was like, who is this child? Because now she's an 8th grader and she's probably one of the best communicators I have, that knows what to do at every single camp, knows how to get that communication going. Like, I use her as an example for some of my juniors because she's just special. Doesn't mean that every kid is going to be that way. Not that every kid is not special, because all my children are special. But yes.
So basically what we're saying here is if you're mature enough to do the mature things, the adult things, then it's probably a good time to start the recruiting process. Let's turn it into this. And now we've talked a little bit about recruiting, what a parent would say. So now with COVID-19 and the lockdown slowly starting to come out of it a little bit in most areas, what has all this revealed to the prospects and their families right now?
That we are the most.
I'm going to lead this with you. What does this reveal to everybody now that we're slowly getting out? What should they have been doing? What should they be doing now? And what should they continue to do as we get back onto the fields and start playing this great game?
The first thing that it has revealed is that America is the most judgmental society. The one, if there's one, and I say that kidding, but if there's one piece that I could say, it is, and I know y'all see this too, I really wish people would stop judging other people's decisions on what decision they make with their own kid. It's kind of like I remember 3 years ago or 4 years ago, when we went to we took the kids to a safari park, and because we had a video of the window down and a tiger coming up to eat something, you know, that we were sitting at. I mean, I had to take it down from social media within 10 minutes. Within 10 minutes, because people were going off talking about, you know, wanting to call CPS, you're endangering your children, you know, and all this kind of stuff. And it's, you know, it's something common. And what's happened as the conversations about different areas started to open up, you had people, oh man, can't wait to let these girls out. And then you had the other ones that are, oh, you can't wait just a couple of weeks, you're going to kill us all, you know. And here's the thing, what the governing bodies decide is what the governing bodies are going to decide. What I decide for my kid, what Dave decides for his, what I decide for mine is none of his business. What he decides for his is none of my business. That the only people that they got to work it out with is the travel coach that they play with, if their team makes the decision to get out and go play. But as a family, I have a couple of parents of my prospects that I'll be honest, one of them works for the CDC, and you know, I would use the word paranoia, but obviously he's a little more in the know than I am. So, you know, he has a little bit more of a paranoia where their team is going to be starting to play. And as soon as I believe they have one like in a week from now, basically. And he called me, you know, almost in tears saying, am I going to hurt her? And, you know, by having her wait a little bit longer and everything. The travel coaches, luckily, they're on a really good team. And their travel coaches have basically said, hey, we're not going to turn around. That's your decision. We can get pickups for a couple of weeks or a month or so, no big deal. But he wants to keep her more restricted because he has a paranoia that all of a sudden the gates are going to open. And if 500 bull run through this gate and one of them has it, naturally, it only takes one to spread it back out and get the whole thing to happen again.
Sure.
But as far as what was, what is, and what's about to happen, if number one, like we talked about before, those those that are waiting for the dust to settle, and now all of a sudden, this is probably the scariest piece, was everybody has had this 2 weeks of relief because they all of a sudden, a lot of NAIA coaches all of a sudden got told by their ADs, hey, rather than waiting until June 1st to bring kids on visits, you're free and clear on May 10th and May 13th, and all of a sudden they got the green light, and all of a sudden, you know, everybody is going to go and play a couple of tournaments mid-May and end of May to knock off some rust, and then they're going to be showcasing the beginning of June. They've had 2 weeks of feeling like, oh man, we endured it. And then all of a sudden it is a kick in the chin that, hey, this is probably about to happen.
Sure.
And so it's scary for them. But
Sure.
what it does say is those three things that me and you keep talking about, they have always been important. During COVID-19, they've become even more important. And if you read the NCAA release yesterday, virtual, and then in addition to, as we've talked about, fishing in the right ponds and everything, it goes back to the top three and most important things that have always been important and are going to be even more important moving forward. The addendum or addition to it is that the team that you're playing on and the places that you're playing had better have some form of methodology of streaming, and you would better know which coaches you're supposed to be sending it to, and it had better be smooth. Because Mike, you know, when you were at Ole Miss, if you were sitting there watching it and it was steady stream, that's fine. But if it breaks up a couple of times and you're having complications, boom, you're finding something else. And so bottom line is the first one, fishing in the right pond. Second one being, you got to have the right person that is confirming with the coaches that they have a need that matches you and they want you to send information so they can watch you this weekend while they're locked up at home. And then the third piece, video. And yeah, I said it twice as much as I normally do because it just became twice as more important.
Any advice, Dave, that you would give to the parents right now as we're coming out of this stuff?
The biggest part in reference to it is these kids need to stay at an elite level. And what do I mean by that is you cannot be lazy right now. And there's so many kids that are out there right now that's doing this or playing or doing distance learning, which is a great thing academically, but they're not putting the time in reference to the conditioning part, the lifting part, the throwing part. And there's going to be a lot of injuries once we start going back into this because there are going to be kids playing 7 days a week again. And if they're not ready, when those gates open up, they are going to be passed by. That's number one. So their skills have to be flush and perfect, to be honest with you, because again, When that first game hits, that college coach is there. He might give you one at bat. Are you ready? Because if you're not ready, guess what? He's going to continue to walk or he's going to find somebody else. That's the first thing. That when everything goes, bottom line is parents, be parents. Sit in the stands, clap for them, give them encouraging words, but don't be that parent that is constantly on your child. I was a fault for that when I was in the stands. Bottom line is allow the kids to play and allow them to succeed and allow them to enjoy the game. But at the same time is you need help in reference to the recruiting process, because just like Robby says, if you don't do it, dot your I's and cross your T's perfectly, guess what? Somebody else did, and they got your daughter's spot. So when push comes to shove, and that's the reason why NSR, when I got involved in it and saw exactly how they laid it out for you, bottom line is my athletes and my parents that I deal with, they love it. And they're so appreciative because, again, it's on social media. It's in their face all the time. And the college coaches love it because, like I said, they have everything they need. And it's very organized.
And Dave, I think what people need to realize is Dave was the parent behind the scenes, watching his daughters play or on the field, helping to coach. And we had a previous relationship from college and dorm mates. And so we knew each other for a while. So we got a chance to have really conversations just about how the process works before his daughters really got to be recruiting. And so Dave got a chance to really learn a lot about that. As we went further along in the process, Dave learned more and more and more. So the reason I bring that up, parents, is you need to know the expectations of what these college coaches are doing, what is expected of you. Don't be afraid to get that information. You can reach out to one of the NSR scouts. You can reach out to somebody in our office. I'm sure a lot of these travel ball coaches, but be in the know, because you don't know what you don't know until you know. And that sounds great.
To add to that, travel coaches, if you don't know exactly what is going on right now, it's okay. Reach out to one of us. That our job is prospects and taking care of college coaches, but travel coaches, high school coaches, instructors, if you have kids and parents that are relying on you and you're not completely in the know about something, it doesn't make you an insufficient coach. It doesn't make you an insufficient person. Reach out to one of us that are on here, or reach out to one of our scouts that are there locally. If I don't have an answer, I'll go to Mike. If Mike doesn't have an answer, he'll go to Nikki. We have the network coast to coast to be able to get you the answer.
Absolutely. Nick, any parting words before we close this thing out tonight regarding all this stuff we talked either tonight or the COVID-19 and what these parents should be doing in these families?
I just want to end it. I know we've talked about some pretty challenging topics. I just want to end it with positivity.
Good.
Like, everything's going to be okay. We're all going to get through this. #alone together, right? But control what you can control. You can't control what's going on everywhere else. You can't control what's happening with your government. You can't control whether you can go to a restaurant or not, or the beach or whatever. Control what you can control. And the things that you can control are working out, getting better every day, loving on your family, okay, doing your schoolwork, and just being positive. So I just wanted to end some positivity, just push it out there to everybody and give you a big virtual hug.
Nikki, thank you so much for that. We all need that hug.
I feel like I saw hearts go across the camera.
Yeah, let's just do the hearts, right? Everybody just do their hearts tonight.
Oh, so much love. Look.
Hey, Nick, Dave, Robby, man, I appreciate you guys being on with us tonight. We could be going on for hours and hours. I know there's so much to talk about within this sport, and I'm sure we'll come back on next week. Probably have more up-to-date stuff, and we'll talk a little bit more scouting and recruiting and get to some more, questions that are being asked. But again, to the prospects and the families that are out there tonight, make sure that you get your name in that video in front of college coaches. And the way to do that is to get in touch with one of our NSR scouts. And you can go to National Scouting Report website at www.nsr.inc.com. You're on the National Scouting Report website right now on Facebook. You can also go to Twitter at NSR Now and Instagram NSR_now. Again, thanks for being on with us tonight, you guys. Thanks for all of you guys that are out there in Facebook land, hanging out with us in the dugout and being part of our conversations about softball. We hope that you'll join us next week. Next week is going to be a little bit different. I know next week we've got the Bozeman family back on again, talking on a different subject. That was impactful the other day, talking about bullying. We'll be back on again, I think Wednesday or either Thursday, about softball again. So stay tuned to Facebook. New updates, the landscape, and how COVID-19 is affecting evaluations and recruiting in so many different sports. And we will do our best from NSR to bring you the most updated information about the sport that you like so much. To close out this great evening, I'm speaking to you guys, the prospects, and not just in the sport of softball, but every sport out there. Guys, train like champions every day. Do it, especially now with COVID-19 and as we're slowly getting out. If your goals don't scare you, they're not big enough, be scouted, get recruited the NSR way. Stay healthy, stay safe. Good night, and God bless. Have a great night, everybody.